Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast. We are so excited to bring you this podcast, and we're so thankful that you're listening to us today. My name is Brandon Poen, and I am joined by my co-host, F. Scott Feil. And today, for this preface episode, what we're going to be doing is first we're going to be telling you guys a little bit about us as people and about our experience and our background. But not only that, kind of why we're doing this podcast and kind of how we're going to do it. So I will start off. Again, my name is Brandon Poen. I'll start off kind of at the beginning of my story because I think it makes a little bit more sense for me to start there. So, when I was a teenager in high school, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And like most others, I was broke. So I needed to find a job pretty much ASAP. So there weren't a lot of jobs open where I was at, but there was a lifeguard position available at a local water park. So I kind of went on a whim and I went for it and I took it. And I actually ended up working there for about 6 summers and learned a ton of stuff. And it actually kind of pushed me to go more and look more into the medical field because I found that whole field very interesting. So I started looking into medical careers, including nursing, medicine, exercise physiologist, athletic training, and PT. And I spent some time talking with and observing each of these choices, but I was kind of still unsure. So my decision actually was determined when I spent a week observing with a local PT in his private practice treating a few patients. And, just seeing the impact that this guy had in changing these people's lives and what this guy did for the community truly made a lasting impact on me. And that's really what decided me to go into PT altogether. And I still maintain contact with this guy to this day. And I'm going to give a shout out to Jojo Sason of Bourbonnais for that one. So then I pursued PT school, got in, went through it. When I got out, I graduated in 2015 and I moved to Michigan. And I moved to Michigan because my girlfriend and now fiance was studying medicine up here in Michigan. So I moved up here to kind of be closer to her. So I started my journey as a PT for a good hospital system, and I'm still working there today. And when I started out, I had a dose of reality. Working on my own in the real world is very different from what school prepared me for. And I feel like there was a big gap in terms of knowledge and skills. And I'll be honest, I really honestly had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. I made a lot of mistakes and I thought I was a failure. I wasn't able to get the outcomes that I wanted. I felt like I wasn't helping people. And I took a few CEUs and that helped a little bit for a week or two, but then eventually, that feeling would still come back. So as that continued to happen, I continued to kind of spiral kind of more towards burnout and even kind of get depressed at times. So I feel like I was not achieving my life purpose and I knew that something needed to change. So what I did then is I applied for a residency program for that upcoming year. As I thought, well, maybe I just need more guidance and mentorship through a program. So I went through the application and interview process and I didn't get it. And at that point, I was crushed and I felt defeated. And I spiraled even more into full-blown burnout. And I was not a happy person anymore at that point. And I was actually very, very close to actually leaving PT altogether. So it wasn't too long after that one of my PT classmates actually posted on our class Facebook page about the podcast of Jeff Moore and Greg Todd. And I listened to the content because I was like, I've never seen podcasts before. I don't know what these are about. So I'll listen and I'll do anything at this point. So I listened to them and I started listening to the content that they had in terms of, the content that they talked about and the personal development strategies that were in there. And slowly but surely, stuff started to change for the better. Gradually. But then after that, I was like, you know what? I felt like a total new person after that. And and I found other motivational speakers too to be very helpful, but I feel like people should know that for this reason, with me going through that experience in terms of feeling like I almost wanted to get out, I was like, I don't want any other new student to go through that. And my goal is I want to be able to help contribute to help educating newer therapists to avoid those traps, or if they're in that trap, to get out of it. Now, in terms of why I want to go more into education specifically in different roles is because when I was in my third year of PT school, we were CIs to second year students in our PT clinic. And for me, that was probably the most fun thing that I did throughout the whole 3 years of PT school. I mean, I loved it. I love going in. I love prepping. I love teaching the student. I loved running the lab. I loved seeing the student do better with the patient. And to me, there was no better feeling in the world when she dominated it. And I was like, I'm so happy. And I'm like, I know I want to do this at some point in my career. Now, of course, I know I need to work for a little bit more to get more experience, to actually get a little bit more confidence and experience in order to be a better educator, to at least have some knowledge on my side. But I knew I kind of always wanted to go through that.
Wow, Brandon, great story, man. I appreciate you sharing that because that really sheds a lot of light on, who you are as a clinician and as a person, and what your journey's looking like up till this point and what you want it to look like in the future. I can really relate to your story because I had a very similar path in that I had no idea what I wanted to do either, except I knew then, and it was my senior year of college. So, I was basically an English major at Wake Forest University, and my senior year, I realized that I wanted no part of an English job. I didn't want to edit. I didn't want to read. I didn't want to do writing. I didn't want to teach. So I had a big question mark as far as what I was going to do after graduation. Luckily, my mom was an English major and my dad taught English for high school students for 30 years. And, having a decent English background coming up, I had a bunch of AP credits. So I placed out of a bunch of freshman English classes and I was able to pretty much finish my major by junior year. So my senior year, second semester, I had the tough schedule of bowling, golf, and intro to Japan, and a whole ton of free time on my hands. So it was at that point that I decided, well, I better do some good in the world at least. And I started volunteering at the hospital in Winston-Salem there. And they put me in the PT department, which was awesome because I got to see some really cool PTs doing some really good stuff. And I thought to myself, wow, I could do this as a job. This is really cool. And then I took a look at the prerequisites needed to get into PT school. And I said, well, nope, don't have that one. Nope, don't have that one. And I just kept going down the list and realized, wow, I don't have a lot of these. So I graduated in 4 years, but, that English degree just kind of sat on the shelf collecting dust for that 5th year while I ended up taking a bunch of math and science courses. And luckily at the end of that, I was able to finally get into a PT program at East Carolina University. Now from there, things are a little bit different for me because I was in a master's program. I've been practicing for about 10 years now as a physical therapist. And when I went to school, ECU was phasing out its master's program. So I was the last master's class to go through, I believe. And then they offered us a 3rd year doctoral option if we wanted. And so I stuck around for the 3rd year. I figured I'd get the DPT because it seemed like the right thing to do. That's the direction the field was heading in. And, it seemed like the right thing to do for me. But in that 3rd year, my dad got sick with some heart problems and passed away. And I wasn't able to complete all of my coursework or pass my board exam in time to finish up there at ECU. So I had graduated with a master's degree and had a couple classes, most of the classes needed for a DPT, but at that point the window of opportunity had closed and it had become a full-fledged DPT program at that point. So I would almost have to start all over again if I wanted the DPT. So I basically started working as a tech in Charleston, trying to pass my board exam. And as soon as I passed, I started traveling for a year as a physical therapist. And then I also started the transitional doctorate program at University of St. Augustine down in Florida. And I was able to finish my transitional doctorate there in about 3 years, taking about 1 course per semester because a couple of my courses from ECU's doctoral program transferred over. So it kind of shortened up the time on that. But while I was there, I also had a couple of professors ask me if I was interested in teaching. And really at the time I said, no, I want no part of teaching. My dad did it for 30 years and I sat in on a couple of his classes and those kids were punks. I wanted no part of teaching. So they said, well, think about it and get back to us and let us know because the educational doctorate has a couple of classes that overlap with the DPT. So you could kind of cut a 4-year program down to a 3-year program. And so I went back and I talked to my wife about it a little bit and we kind of thought that maybe, if my hands fail and my back fails and my knee goes out and I just can't do physical therapy anymore and it just becomes too grueling on the joints, at some point I might be able to kind of fall back on teaching. So I said, all right, well, let me start with the educational doctorate and let's see where it goes, where it leads me. And that's basically where I'm at today. I've finished all my coursework. The only thing I have left is my dissertation. I'm working on that right now, but there's still a pretty big question mark looming over which direction I want to head in the educational realm of physical therapy. I don't know that I want to go into the world of academia just yet, kind of dipping my toes in the water and testing it out and kind of trying to get some feedback as far as how the world of academia works, because I don't think that I've ever fully grasped what it takes to get to that level and to be successful there. And I think that is really the main reason why when Brandon reached out to me to be a co-host for this podcast, I was thrilled, because I honestly don't know. And I think a lot of the guests that we're going to have on the show here are not only going to be helpful and educational to our audience, but I think it's going to be a huge help to me as well, because I can honestly say I don't know which direction I want to go. I feel like I have a really good grasp on a lot of education and a lot of educational theories and what works and what doesn't and how we learn. But I don't know that I know how I want to portray that in a medium that's comfortable for me, whether it be CEUs or clinical instruction or academia. I think right now, I'm just going to try to finish up this dissertation and then try to take as much as the information from our guests as I can and try to learn from it and grow from it. And hopefully it'll give me some guidance.
Yeah, Scott. So, I mean, thank you so much for that take, and I think that was really inspiring to hear. And I can relate to it, some of that what you said at the end in terms of not knowing. Like you said, I really don't know what I want to do. I don't know whether I want to be a professor, CEU teacher, just a CI. But the reason why is because, like, I don't know a lot about this stuff. And, I think a lot of the content out there in the PT world in terms of podcasts and social media has grown exponentially, even in the past 2 years. Like, there's so much good content out there, regarding, there's good stuff with clinical, regarding pain, business, and
Yep.
so much good stuff. But one thing that I felt was really not present a lot was there wasn't really a lot of discussion, or not as much content for that matter, regarding this specific trajectory for therapists or even healthcare providers in general. For someone who, like me, who really wants to consider going somewhere down that path, I feel like I really don't know where to go or know how to do it, because I feel like there's just not a lot of that real world and that good content out there to tell you how to do stuff. And I was like, you know what? There's podcasts that talk about this and this and this. Let's see if we can get one together that addresses this issue. And with this podcast, we're not just looking to do, we're trying to do a lot of things with this podcast. We want to help all physical therapists and healthcare providers. We're all, at the very minimum, educators to our patients.
Absolutely.
Now, some people don't want to go more into other types of educational routes, and that's fine. But for us, we realize that there's a lot of different ways that someone who wants to go into education can go, whether from a clinical instructor, whether from a mentor, whether a CEU teacher, whether to full out academia. There's a lot of different avenues that people can go. Me and Scott just kind of felt like there wasn't a lot of content out there that hit this specific area, and that's what we're looking to change. And yeah, we are doing it also to figure it out for ourselves, but we also want to share what we find with you guys, because we know that there are other people that share a similar problem, and that's our goal mostly with this one. And we're so excited for the support that we've had, and we're so excited to launch this. And I know we've got a lot of good episodes coming up. We've got some pretty awesome guests, so we're pretty pumped.
Definitely. I'm excited for a lot of these guests. I think if you just take a step back and look at the big picture, this podcast really fills a void. Like you were talking about, there's just not that educational realm out there. And, this goes for clinical purposes as well, but it's okay for you to say, I'm not too sure about that, but I know who is, and let me go get that information from that person because they're the expert on it. And I feel like a lot of our guests are going to be that guy or that girl that we can go to when we need a question answered. And I think that's going to be, a lot of the guests that we're having on are actually idols of mine, people that I've looked up to for years in the PT world and in other realms as well, not just PT, which is pretty exciting for me as well, because we're not just pigeonholing it and limiting it to the world of physical therapy. We're going to go into a bunch of different realms and do what I like to call intellectual trespassing, where we kind of go into different groups and we go into different professions and we learn what we can from that profession. I know there's a big movement lately to try to get clinicians, especially physical therapists, to attend not only their annual meeting, like CSM for physical therapists, but to go to meetings of other professionals and sit in and see if you can learn anything. I know I'm trying to start going to a couple of different meetings every year now and just see if I can pick anything up, whether it be, a surgeon or orthopedics meeting or an acupuncture meeting or a massage therapist meeting, or just anything that I can get my hands on that'll kind of help me learn more about health and wellness and physical therapy in general, and anything that'll help get my patients better. And I think that's kind of what this podcast is trying to do, is set up a place where you can come to learn about specific areas of education that you might not have known about or have an interest in, but don't know the steps to take in order to get to where you want to be in that realm. So yeah, I'm really excited for it, and especially excited for a lot of our guests that we're going to have on.
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. And so we'll kind of talk a little bit about, some of the couple guests that we're going to have to start off with. Our first guest is actually going to be Dr. John Childs of Evidence in Motion, and he'll be coming on and he'll be talking about kind of an overview of the PT education model and some of the limitations that has and some solutions. And we also plan on having Todd Davenport on the show, and he'll be talking about kind of what makes a great educator. And we're so excited to hear what these guys think, because I think what they're going to bring is going to be absolutely incredible and so beneficial for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. Those are two of the best in the business starting off our podcast. So some heavy hitters right up front I'm really excited for.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and we value, we know we've come up with a lot of stuff in terms of this podcast, but to all of our listeners out there, we totally encourage and we welcome any suggestions or feedback that anyone has, because I'll admit, when I've reached out to some of the PTs that I know, they've actually brought up some good topics and good ideas that I never thought of.
Absolutely. And if there's anything that kind of strikes a chord with you or anything that you feel you want to know more about, definitely get in touch with us. We have several methods for you to get in touch with us.
Absolutely. So right now we have 3 pages set up, and we are on social media. So our first one is on Facebook, and we are at the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast page. We are also on Twitter, and that would be at HET, all caps, podcast. But we're also on our website, which is healthcareeducationtransformationpodcast.com. And we'll have it up there so you're able to kind of leave us a message at any moment in time, and we'll definitely get back to you. I can be found at brandonpoenphysio.wordpress.com.
Awesome. And if anybody's looking to find me, you can just basically look up pteducator.com, and all of my social media links are on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone so much for listening. We're so excited to get this project off the ground and bring it to light, and thank you for joining us.